I own a company with my husband and my brother, and we design aerial adventure parks all over the world. Zipline tours, treetop canopy tours, challenge courses. And so that is what my company does. And it has been sort of a crazy growth process for us since we started in our basement. You know, we had 32 employees, permanent employees, and about 50 project-based employees, and we work all over the world, have, you know, different crews going at different times, and we spend a lot of time outside. At least our crews spend a lot of time outside. But I think one of the reasons why I was excited about coming to the speak on behalf of businesses that care about riparian areas and invasive species, that's what the Tamarisk Coalition talks about, right? Is that we spend all of our, I mean, it's really important for our economic health of our company to have healthy, thriving natural spaces. If we don't have healthy, thriving natural spaces, we won't make any money. And that means our clients won't come to us and say, hey, you know, we really want to build this beautiful experience for all these people to enjoy every year, and you know, we've got all these invasive species. I mean, one of the things that we struggle with a lot is invasive species in trees, and how to figure out how to work with those species, because really that's the structure of what we do. And so, yeah, and I know this is more about rivers, but it's really important to recognize that for our business, it's an asset. The natural world, the natural space, the health of the natural space is an asset for us. It's a capital asset that we have to have in order to have a thriving small business. We have built 4 different canopy tours and zipline tours for river rafting companies. It's one of the things that they like to do to diversify their tourism. So they often have the place where we've built the tours, they have, you know, you can go rafting or you can go on the zipline tour, and those spaces near the edge of the water have to be healthy. So I don't know, is that basically what you're looking for?
Hi, my name is Christy Pollard, and I'm with an organization called the Grand Junction Economic Partnership. And welcome to Grand Junction. I will tell you how important the rivers are to us. We named our town after the junction of 2 rivers, and so therefore we strive to protect our rivers. My organization is the Economic Development Council here for Mesa County. We work with local businesses to help them with expansion needs, and we work on recruiting new businesses into the area. And certainly as we try to market our area to outside companies, we really draw upon the assets that we have. And having the river running through our community is a tremendous asset from a variety of different reasons. Not only are we in the arid West and we need the water for a variety of purposes, it's also a great tool when it comes to tourism and recreation. It's actually an amazing visual landscape for businesses. We just recently had a competitive analysis done on our community that really highlighted the river trail and some of the amenities that businesses have locating along the river. So as we look at the things that make us unique to the world, the river running through us really is unique. I had the opportunity to get to know the Tamarisk Coalition in my role as a community relations manager for Chevron. And we actually took a team out and dug out tamarisk and Russian olives for a day. And that was actually a really special experience, I think. Not only do I have scars to, to show for it, but it was really a great opportunity for the business community to get involved in a project that really gave back, and we could see the impact that it was making. You know, as you look at tamarisk and some of these invasive species and the amounts of water that they are actually taking out of our system, it's really important that we manage those appropriately. So we look forward to working with organizations like yours. We look forward to getting the business community more involved. I think, as we talk about ways that we can collaborate more, I think there's really an opportunity for the businesses to give back to some of the nonprofits that are out there. I think it's a matter of us knowing what's available. We have a lot of people that are very passionate about conservation and preservation of our water and our waterways. One thing that we've all heard, a Colorado native, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. And that's really true. And I think even to the greatest extent of the word, that we need to fight for our rivers and our waters and the preservation and the conservation of them. So I look forward to hearing what's on your minds today and how we can get our business community much more involved with it.
That was good. Me too. And I'm Kelly Flanagan. I do community relations and government affairs for Xcel Energy, and we come at this probably in a little bit of a different way. The river is very important to us, as those of us from Colorado know. We have a hydroelectric power plant on the Colorado River, and have maintained that first right for water since 1900. It's very important to the reliability of our system to provide the electricity and the heat that we're enjoying right now. So we look at it from a couple of ways. One, as I said, it's a very important and critical asset to our overall structure. But we also all live here and understand the importance that the river adds to our life and to our ability to recruit and retain employees to within Public Service of Colorado and Xcel Energy. And we financially support the Tamarisk Coalition through our various foundation grant programs, and have for several years. We also take a very considerable involvement in water issues. We participate in the Club 20 Water Committee, the Colorado Water Congress, the Colorado River Basin Roundtable, as I mentioned, the Tamarisk Coalition, and we also have partnered a couple of years, I think, going now. We do an annual day of service with our employees where we go out and we help with various nonprofits and contribute our time and our employees' time for many causes. So we too have lots of scars from removing tamarisk and Russian olive as well. I think it's really important to maintain the integrity of our system, not only so that we continue to have the resource necessary to provide the hydroelectric power, but really that community piece, making this an exciting and an active place for our employees to be. I'm excited. I'm a river kind of girl. I grew up in a community that really rebounded economically by having river rafting as an industry. So I've really seen this asset be able to really influence economic development in a really positive way in a community that really struggles to recruit businesses because it is a small mountain community. So I think that it's very interesting to really look at a river in many different ways, from not only the beautiful part of it and the recreation part of it, but the energy part of it and the economic development part of it. And I am also excited to hear your questions. Thanks.
Perfect. My name is Derek Lynch. I'm the marketing manager over at the Cabela's here in Grand Junction. Over the past year, I've been able to kind of witness what goes into opening up new stores, and it's all about location for us. So being the first Colorado store opening up in 2010, there's a reason why they opened up here, and a big part of that is because of the river, because of the surrounding area. And one of my, priorities in the community is thanking those who have the passion for conservation and restoration, that keep the access to the river and surrounding areas to really keep us alive.
Hello, I'm David Miller, and as Stacy indicated, I'm from Alpine Bank. And I noticed most of you are Coloradans, but some of you aren't. So I'll tell you a little bit about Alpine Bank. We're a local Western Colorado bank. We have $2.7 billion in assets. We're an employee-owned financial institution. You might look at us as a credit union on steroids. We were chartered in 1973, so we're 43 years old. Our headquarters are in the middle of the Colorado River Basin in Glenwood Springs. We have 38 locations, 36 of which are in western Colorado, from Four Corners all the way to Steamboat, Roaring Fork, and we do have a little foothold, 2 new locations in Denver. We employ almost 600 employee owners, and we serve more than 130,000 customers. So if any of you are Alpine Bank customers, thank you. You enable us to do lots of good things. What's our interest in water? Well, Alpine Bank is the greenest financial institution in Colorado. As Stacy stumbled through the ISO 14001 registration, I noticed a number of you are researchers and academics, so you would understand the importance of having an ISO international registration for our environmental management system. And that's something that came about because of an employee grassroots bottom-up initiative forming our green team. And basically, a number of our employee owners said, we live in Colorado for the lifestyle. None of us are getting rich here, but we do care about our recreation and our environment. Can we do something that would really matter? So, you know, my elevator speech on the green team is it's all about protecting our lifestyle and saving money by being smart with our scarce environmental resources. We also have, as part of the environmental management system and our participation in the CDPHE's environmental leadership program, a Save Water plan, an action plan under the way we manage our resources. And we voluntarily cut our water consumption by 30%. So one of the things, since water is liquid gold and something that we fight over, our bank's all about conservation, and we love sharing the fact that we have techniques where we've been able to not change anything in terms of the quality of our experience at the bank, but save 30% along the way. Everybody has a debit card of some kind, and we have debit cards where we let our customers tell us how to spend the money. So if you have an Alpine Bank personal loyalty card, you get to pick whether you want environment or education or community and arts, and based on your having that card that doesn't cost you anything, every time you use that card, we put 10 cents into a fund based on where you live and what your interests are. And in the case of the environment card, we have almost 9,000 active environment cards held by our bank customers. And last year, we accumulated, based on those 10 census, almost $180,000 to redirect. So those of you that are nonprofits and 501c3s, you can apply, you know, for a project from our loyalty card, environment card. In fact, the Tamara's Coalition has done that and received some funding accordingly. If you're curious about how these 10 census add up over time, since the program began with our environment card in 2004, we have donated over $1.4 million. So those 10 census add up when our customers care about the environment and tell us to spend time that way and money. We also, as an employee owner of the bank, you get 24 hours a year where you can either come to your normal job or you can go and pull out tamarisk along the Colorado River in Palisade, where I live. Or we've been a recurring sponsor and organizer for Arbor Day and Earth Day in Grand Junction, which is another way that we care about the environment and spread the word. In particular, you know, with that volunteer money and time, we have used in Mesa County, we actually gave away $27,000 for environment alone last year. So that would be an example of one thing we're doing together in our community here. In the little cheat sheet of questions that Stacy gave us in advance, she said, is there anything else of note that you might want to say? And I did want to mention that when I was in the plenary session this morning and learned about the Walton Family Foundation funding for the Tamara's Coalition in this program, I had a big smile on my face because Alpine Bank participates in a business coalition called Protect the Flows, which is all about 1,000 businesses in western Colorado and western U.S. very concerned about our riparian environment and the Colorado River Basin, and we're actually a featured member of Protect the Flows, and I actually serve on the Corporate Advisory Council for Protect the Flows. So we're very committed to our water resources and dealing with the invasive species.
Thank you. One of the cool things that strikes me about our panel here is that while everybody here lives in Grand Junction or in Palisade, they're all working at regional levels with these businesses that they work with, or working to get businesses from a regional perspective to come here. So that's a pretty neat thing. It's not, you know, we said local business panel, but it's a little bigger than that, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to kick it off with a question, and then I'll open it up to the audience. And I think you all hit on my first question, so I'm skipping to the second one. But how can organizations like the Tamarisk Coalition or other watershed groups or collaborations of organizations better communicate the work that we're doing and how it benefits private industry?
I'd be happy to answer that one. You know, I think from our organization's perspective, we really want to hear more about what these projects are that are available so that we can connect our businesses into them. You know, Colorado has become a very special place where people have an eye towards conservation and preservation. So a lot of our business leaders and our employees are very passionate about these issues, not only from a volunteer standpoint, but also from a giving sort of standpoint. So we love to direct our businesses to programs where they can really make a difference, give them the opportunity to give back to their community. Stacy's done a great job of coming and updating us on a fairly regular basis with the activities that the Tamarisk Coalition is taking place. You know, if there are other nonprofits out there, we would welcome the audience. That we would love to sit down with you to learn more about what you have going on and see if there are specific ways that we can plug into what you're doing. You know, I can't emphasize the fact that business leaders really want to be involved with restoration type projects. They're pretty special because you can see the finished project. It's a very tangible sort of thing that you can take pride in. And so I know that businesses look for opportunities to get their teams out in the field. It helps build teams, that, you know, those collaborative sort of opportunities. And if they can take those sort of opportunities and channel them towards something that is really making an impactful difference in the community or the state or the region, that much more the better. So I would welcome any of you, if you have a business card, if you would give it to me, I would love to reach out to you individually and figure out ways that we can get on your radar so that we can be regularly updated about the activities that you have going on.
I'd like to add that it's not just a one-way relationship. It's reciprocal. In that, in our bank, we're very clear that millennials and lots of community members care about our environment and want to do something that has a social purpose. And when we're able to volunteer or fund the Tamarisk Coalition or Protect the Flows or the other activities we do, it really helps us in terms of developing our business and our community, as well as obviously the recipients of the funding and the volunteer work we do.
Say that the way we have gotten involved in community projects and volunteering in the community, the way we've gotten our employees involved, we have a lot of young employees, a lot of people under the age of 40 in our company, and they're all recreators. They all spend a lot of time outside. And so the way we've gotten people involved is just by co-sponsoring a work day with, you know, COPMOBA or Mesa Land Trust, and providing beer, because that usually gets people there.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'll open it up. Sorry, I promised you something else. How are your business, philanthropic, or other strategies decided at your business? So how do you decide what types of causes to support, or what business practices to invest in?
I guess I'll take that one. We do have a foundation, and it has 4 focus areas, and these focus areas are really designed to not only show our commitment to the communities that we are in, but they also, in one way or another, of course, benefit our business. So we look at education, and that's obviously very important for future workforce. We look at arts and culture, which is more important in more rural communities where they may not be able to be funded to the level that they are in a more metro area, but they really are an important hub for a community, and we want to be part of that important hub. And then we have, of course, economic development, which for a utility economic development, we feel like we're very critical to that because you can't really grow your business if you can't turn your lights on. So we do view ourselves in there, and so that, of course, is one of our focus areas. And finally, environmental sustainability is really important to our company. Not only are we doing all of the things that we can do to be a good energy partner, but those are programs that we also can see across the board are important to the communities that we serve. So then when we have those buckets, then one of the things, and kind of to touch on the question that you had asked earlier, a lot of times we don't know, especially small nonprofits that maybe have a handful of employees, a big company like ours doesn't know that you're there. So we want to be able to know that you're there so that we can invite you to apply for different grants that we have. And so I think that then when we can really partner together, like David said, a two-way flow where we know that you're out there, and if you fit in those focus areas, we really do want to help advance your mission because your mission advances ours and really does make our communities a better place. But when we really do look at how do we decide those strategies, it is kind of on a regional basis. So what we look at in Western Colorado is very different from what my counterparts in Denver look at. Their community needs are different, their environmental needs are different, and we want to try to fill the gaps where we can.
So with Cabela's, it's pretty much decided at the top, except for our local market. So our funding, a lot of it goes towards youth advocacy, conservation, and also youth education. So kind of passing the torch and making sure they're getting outdoors and us providing the information and the gear to allow them to do those activities. And it's also my job as the local marketing guy to go out, reach out to the like Tamara's Coalition, other conservation partners, to really see who is making a difference out there, to see where we're going to put our funding from a store level.
I alluded to in the beginning that we have these loyalty card programs, and mirroring what Kelly was saying about the priorities the Excel has, we have 6 areas that are buckets. Environment, obviously, education, arts and culture, general community organizations, and then Colorado Mountain College has a special scholarship fund, and then Hispanic causes as well. Now, because we're a bottom-up grassroots bank, the decisions are made as to what we fund and how we spend our volunteer time, location by location and community by community. So I'm sure not everyone that is from Colorado in this room is from Grand Junction or Mesa County. I saw earlier in the day Durango and other locations. So every Alpine bank has its own program to allocate volunteer time and dollars. So I would encourage you to make your nonprofit and your interest known at the grassroots at your local Alpine bank. And you can just ask, who's the community relations person or who manages the loyalty card program. And that's a way to find out who to network with at each community. Now, the magnitude of what's available, of course, is how much support there is in your community. And as I indicated by just sharing with you the environment credit amounts, there's a lot of money out there. And what's really amazing from my perspective is how much of that money sits in a GL account because we don't have everyone in the audience coming to tell us about what they're doing and offering us a way to work together. So there's more gold out there for each of you that are working on interesting projects in our footprint.
I would just like to add, I think a lot of times we think about, connecting with businesses from a monetary sort of standpoint, but I would encourage the nonprofits to look to your economic development commissions, your chambers. They are nonprofits, so from a cash sort of standpoint, they're not going to write you the big check, but what they can provide you is access to huge numbers of businesses. In our organization, we have almost 200 businesses that are a part of our organization, and we our litmus test is, does this initiative impact the economic development of the area? And if I can look my board of directors in the eye and say, yes, it does, then our board supports it. So when you think about from an advocacy standpoint, I know each of you, as you're going through your different projects, there's always a political component to it. If you need the business community support as you're going before elected officials, if you're going for grants and you need support from the business community, there are resources there. And even if it's just from a marketing sort of standpoint, you want a broader group of people to know about your project. Organizations like your local chambers and your economic development commissions can help spread that mission in a much quicker, more succinct sort of manner. So keep an eye on your nonprofits. I think there's a lot of opportunity to connect with them as well.
I mean, we're just a small family business, so it's me usually making the decisions about what we do for donations every year. I will say that we have participated in the past in a program called 1% for the Planet. It's a national nonprofit started by Yvonne Chenard, who is the founder of Patagonia. And it basically just asks any for-profit business to donate 1% of their gross income to nonprofits working for the environment. If you are a nonprofit in this room, I would very highly recommend signing up on that website. I know there's a fee to do so, but the way a business like ours decides at the end of the year how we donate money is we just go through this search engine. A lot of times I donate the money into our community, but sometimes we go outside. And so, you know, the Rainforest Action Network, we've donated a ton of money to them in 2012. I mean, and I just did some research on this 1% for the Planet website. So, and those are companies committed to donating 1% of their gross revenue. I mean, that doesn't maybe seem like a lot when you think about 1%, but it's gross. It's not net. It's not their profit. It's actually, you know, what they're bringing in their door. So, so yeah, if you haven't heard of that, look it up.
Thank you. Are there questions from the audience?
So when we're fundraising, I'd like to get some tips on making that first contact, and I don't necessarily mean your company personally, but you know, you get an issue where do I just walk in there and try to budge in there and get a contact, or do I try to write a letter first? So, you know, David, you made a comment on the Alpine Bank, and you made some reference to some contact people you have. But let's, you know, I don't know that when I'm getting started. So what's the best way for me to get started and tell you about us and how we can do good for Grand Valley without being intrusive about it, particularly on that first contact?
It's a great question, and it's kind of like being in, you know, the job search. You know, my daughter's a college senior, and she's got to get her first real job, and we're coaching her on that. So along those lines, the first thing is I encourage you to do some research about, just as was being suggested by Sarah, find out, you know, who the organizations are, what their values are, what their initiatives. You know, it's like getting a job, or it's going out for a grant, you know, doing your research before you apply for a grant. Because people that network through to the right, these community relations people at the different locations and regions in our bank get a much better reception when someone comes in and says, you know, we understand what Alpine Bank's about, you know, that we're employee owned, that we, you know, have a green team, et cetera, et cetera. So my first comment would be do your homework in terms of being aware of, you know, what we do or what any other organization, what Excel's priorities are, et cetera. The next would be obviously to find out who the right person is. Sometimes you can find that, you know, on the website. Sometimes you find that by asking 2 or 3 people, you know, at the bank. It's not always as transparent or as easy as it should be. But, you know, you've got to find out who's receptive, who's charged with listening and engaging with the community, because otherwise, you could just be brushed off, not intentionally, but it's just the wrong person, and the person had a bad day or didn't know, and etc. So I would spend some time making sure that you find who the right person is, and do that part. The third thing I would do is I would ask for some time to meet with that person in person, realizing that the people are busy, but that you're going to get much more of a good sense of whether there's mutual interest if you're able to sit down in somebody's office for 15 minutes or half an hour. Lots of stuff comes in email. We all get spammed all the time. And I pay a whole lot more attention to somebody I know or I have a connection with than something that just comes randomly. So since relationships really matter, to the extent that you can cultivate those relationships. And my last comment would be being aware of the order of magnitude of what you can ask for. You don't want to. You have to have some sense, and you can ask this in advance as to what's a typical grant look like, or if there's a history of grants or programs, because you want to fit what you are asking for in a way that you're going to have a good reception. We like lots of projects, so if somebody comes in and they want money for operating support, that is not nearly as interesting to us as if they have something specific they want to do. For instance, last year I got my cheat sheet from our community relations person here, but she said the Tamarisk Coalition had a Raft the River event, and they needed some support, for Raft the River. So I think when Stacy or whoever came in and said, we're doing this and isn't this cool, and it's a project and it's bite-sized, and can you help us with Raft the River, that got a much better reception than if it had been something that wasn't specific and concrete.
I think that was a pretty thorough answer. I really would encourage for companies maybe like mine in your area. I do think your community relations or public relations person would be a great initial point of contact. And I think it is important to, as David is saying, cultivate a relationship so the first time you meet them is not when you're asking them to fund your project, so that they can start to get that buy-in about why what you're doing matters to what they're doing, why it's making the community better. That's their job. And I would offer up call them and ask them if you can buy them a cup of coffee. They'll probably buy it for you, and then you'll have that relationship started. And then I would kind of keep your message top of mind. I get a zillion emails from people requesting funds all the time, but it's a lot easier when I know who the person is, and I feel like we have that relationship, and that you're communicating back to me about how things are going as kind of tangible benchmarks to keep me updated and know that this wasn't just a one-time, one-way relationship, but you want to continue to engage. And so I feel like I have actually contributed to the success of your project. I'm going to be more inclined to do that in the future.
This might be more of a opinionated question, but as I guess for starters, I want to show my appreciation of business owners and people who are making these decisions to give back to their community in an environmental sense. So thank you. That's really cool to see. But I'm curious as to, I know it was mentioned that sometimes you can diverge from the set plan of who you donate to or who you work with. And I'm just curious of the overall likelihood of diverging from that set plan, especially if it is a project that doesn't necessarily garner the public support that a business may be looking for, such as thistle removal. It's something that most people just don't generally understand is a big problem, but needs to get done. And I'm just curious your opinions on the best way to approach a situation like that and the response as business owners on how you would go about doing that.
I think one of the things that's really important is, especially when you're dealing with like a person like me, the community relations person, we don't know what you are doing. We don't know why thistle matters, and we don't know why it's important for it to be gone. So I think that it has to be really turned into a layman kind of a piece, so that not only can I understand what you're doing and why it's important, But if we are in a position where we want to make a value call or a judgment call to fund something that may be outside of the scope, it's going to be a lot easier for me to advocate for you if I really can understand. And the best way that I can demonstrate that I understand it is if I can get someone else to understand it. And so I need to now know why Tamarisk is a problem and why it's going to be better for my business if it's not a problem, and how I can see my time and my money really contributing to that. And so I do think it is really important to provide that upfront education about why it matters, especially to somebody who is so far removed from what you're doing. And I know how difficult that is. I mean, I'm in a utility business, and people don't necessarily understand all of the pieces to how it all works. And so you really do have to get it, pretty basic so that you could sell it upstream. And then it goes back to the relationship piece, where then I can really follow up and I can become an advocate for your success within my own organization. So I think it really does have to do with bullet pointing it and getting it to its kind of basic importance.
I would add too, one thing to remember is, particularly as you're looking at funding, I do think that there are reprioritizations on a fairly regular basis, because the relationships with the people that you have to remember those people change fairly regularly, and their passions change. And I hearken back to when Tim came to Chevron. I knew nothing about Tamarisk. It was completely off my radar. And he sat down with me and explained, the extent of the concern and why it was important to our community to get involved in it. And it was something that Chevron had never funded, ever. And they looked to me and asked me for my position on whether I thought it was important for the company to support it, and did it meet the goals of the company. And so ultimately it ended up being one of the largest gifts that they gave locally, and a complete reprioritization of funding that they had. So I would encourage you, don't get discouraged. Stay the course, and you've heard it a couple of different ways, but that relational piece, extremely critical. Fundraising is all about knowing the people and explaining to them on a very regular basis what your needs are and why it is imperative that the community care.
The only other thing I would add is that small businesses care about economic development. So try to frame your project in that, through that lens, because what happens with economic development, I mean, if we have a distressed economy, we have a hard time recruiting employees, we have a hard time running our business, we have a hard time making money, and so something like Thistle or Tamarisk, I mean, Tamarisk is like the perfect example of this, just because it has affected so much the quality of life for not only our employees, but also just for people in the area. I mean, the entire river trail looks completely different than it did 10 years ago. You can see the water. I mean, for a while there were sections of river where you couldn't even see the water. You can be in the water. So I think if you can frame your sort of position to be focused sort of from a capitalist position, you might have a little bit more of a, some muscle. And I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
Fortunately, at Alpine Bank, since we're this grassroots bottom-up bank, it's not formulaic. Outside of the buckets, of environment and education, etc., it really becomes, who gets the attention locally. Now, one tip I would give you is find an Alpine Bank employee that is concerned about, your cause. Because if you go in there, and there's 600 of us saying, here's something, even if it's a little bit, off the normal radar screen, if you got a champion within the bank, that helps. Now, for Stacy, it was fortunate that I knew about Tamarisk, on the Colorado River Trail, because I lived there and I walked there several times a week. So I got to see the Tamarisk go away, and I understood what that meant. So if you can develop those internal champions, that helps a whole lot. And then another thing that helps a whole lot, at least in the Alpine Bank point of view, is that we, try to, as nicely as we can, remind people that the more people bank with us, the more money we can give away. If you, have a banking tie, if your nonprofit banks with us, or if you bank with us, or if your mother does, or friend, or somebody, so that when you go in and have that initial relationship building with something that's out of the ordinary, you've got a hook, a way to talk about the fact that you really are part of the family.
Two other things. Well, one main thing, if you live in a community the size of ours or smaller, I would highly recommend using your newspaper as a place to voice your opinion. And I feel like newspapers are dying, except in small communities. They're actually the way that we all get our news, and we read the paper every day. So two ways that I have seen this work in our community is people from nonprofits draft letters for me to sign, and that works, just letters to the editor. And then also just doing press releases and, calling somebody, a writer at the newspaper, and saying, hey, I have a story. Because usually in a town this small or smaller, they're looking for stories. They want to tell your story. It's just about tapping in. And I would also stay away from any angry letters to the editor, because that usually doesn't help. I've learned that myself.
I think I'm the catch-all representative since we represent almost 200 businesses, and the energy industry, agriculture, agribusinesses is a primary piece of who we are as an organization, and also as we look at the growth of our economy. Those are our legacy industries, and so we work very hard to foster those industries and those relationships. I will tell you, my husband works for the energy industry, does some consulting for the energy industry. I used to work for Chevron. I will tell you that the energy industry is very, these types of projects are exactly the types of projects that they're funding, but they're dying right now. I mean, I think that is the most simple way to say it. We saw this morning that WPX has now sold its asset to another company, and they're not going to even be in the Piceance Basin after the next couple of months. So, I think it's one of those sort of things that timing is everything. When energy was blowing and going, they were really looking for ways that they could make an impactful difference, and really giving back to environmental conservation, preservation type organizations was a critical piece of what they did. And what they continue to do. But I will tell you, from a funding sort of standpoint, those companies are hurting right now. They're laying people off left and right, so there's just not a lot of money to go around. But I would continue to stay in touch with them. There is still a number of things going on the Front Range, from mining to energy. We also have a very robust solar, geothermal. There are a lot of renewable sort of energy companies that are here. So I would say you definitely continue to reach out to them. I don't think that they're not being on this panel is in any way reflective of their support. I know I feel like I can speak very comfortably on their behalf to say they are behind these sort of causes, and they do have local community relations folks. Anybody that would like the names of the folks that are still here, if you'd like the names of those folks, I'd be happy to give them to you so that you can make those face-to-face introductions. So please don't take it as a slight to the cause. I don't think that is the case at all. I'd be more than happy to give you names and phone numbers for those folks. Gotcha. So here's what I do know about the mining companies, the energy companies. They all have local community relations person, and they are each given a budget. And those folks have a lot of discretion over how those budgets are distributed. So I would imagine in your community that there is somebody from each of those organizations that you can pick up the phone, have a cup of coffee with them. I would put money on it 9 times out of 10 that preservation, conservation, environmental sort of efforts are going to be one of 3 things that they fund.
My question is for Derek.
Could I add? I alluded to before, Protect the Flows is a business organization Alpine Bank is a part of. Our Business of Water Summit 3 conference in about a month and a half is going to be in Phoenix. And one of the persons that I've worked with lobbying for the Colorado River in Washington, D.C. is a person from Palisade who she and her husband own a vineyard and a winery. So I know there are involvements from agriculture in the broader concern about the river. But if you want to come up to me at the end of the panel, I'll give you the information on Protect the Flows and what they're doing, in Arizona in a month and a half. And I'm sure that would be a good way to find other businesses in your neck of the woods that are concerned about the same issues.
Thank you. And just if we could have had 20 people up here for our panel, we would have. So we tried to strike the balance. But great question. Yeah, Tim, you're up.
Okay, Derek, you represent the retail sales component of commerce in this area, and you've got a program that I contribute every time I go and buy something from Cabela's, and that's I think they call it Roundup for conservation or youth conservation, and everybody that has been in line ahead of me or behind me always rounds up their bill. It's easier to write down $40 instead of $39.72 or something. Do you have kind of a model of how that works and can be exported to some of these nonprofits so that they can contact some of their retail people and say, here's a program, Cabela's uses it, it raises money, it's something that's not too difficult to incorporate?
Absolutely, and I'd love to help out with that. And so a percentage of each of that roundup, so at the end of your sale, obviously they ask you if you'd like to donate to conservation, youth advocacy, and youth education. And each store gets a percentage of that back, which is fairly generous. I think last year we gave away about $4,000 to the community, to specific nonprofits and relationships that we built here in the community. And I can get more information about the exact model that we do run.
Okay. My question is, what really makes a nonprofit attractive to you personally? What elements do you look at about these organizations that make them stand out against all other people who come to you and ask for money and volunteerism?
That's a good question. I really like nonprofits. My very first job out of college was an environmental nonprofit. I've worked at a few. And I think one of the things that stand out to me as I'm looking from a funding standpoint is kind of what is the gap that they're filling and how important is that gap to me. I also really do look at the leadership of that organization to kind of see not only who's the staff that's there, but who is involved on the board and what do they bring to the table too. Especially if I'm looking at a nonprofit that I've never seen before, that is a big one that I'm looking at because I want to know who else is committed and involved, and is it a pay-to-play kind of an organization, and are all of those members around the table putting some of their own skin into the game? I think that's something that is kind of important to me. And I think another thing is really just trying to see what the level of sophistication is in promoting your message. Which I think is really important. And I think nonprofits, it takes a long time to set one up. I understand that piece, and it's a passion work, and I get that. And so it really is sort of how do you mesh the passion and the professionalism with kind of those that you are associated with. And so those are kind of some of the things that stand out to me when it's one that I may not have heard of before. Those are kind of the first things that kind of go through the radar kind of checklist for me. I also look, I
I like to look at the business plan and understand exactly what the overall goals and mission of the organization is, and is it a well thought out plan, or am I throwing money to the wind? The other thing is I like to know the impact, and I think even this gentleman mentioned thistle removal. If the person can explain to me the impact of that, I think anything can be high impact, but you've got to make someone understand exactly what that impact is. Sometimes it's a piece of a project that completes something, and so you can make a huge impact by completing a piece of a bigger project. So, I think it really varies, but I think having your act together professionally, also that match from other businesses. A lot of times asking folks to fund operations doesn't happen very frequently, but again, going back to that very specific sort of projects and being able to identify what that impact is and really tapping into people's passions, I would encourage you to get to know who you're talking to and what they've been involved in, and connect whatever your issue is to things that they're passionate about. I cannot be emphasized enough. I have fundraised for a lot of different nonprofits. That relational piece is critical. Get to know your audience, get to know what makes them tick, and you can sell just about anything.
Yeah, and I think there's sometimes a easy way to slip into an idea that nonprofits are doing really good things and businesses are just capitalists, And so I just want to, like, one of the things I always look for when people ask us, hey, will you donate this year, or will you, I usually tap into how has this person crafted what they need? How have they crafted their message to all of us? Because I'm not Xcel Energy or Alpine Bank. I don't have like piles of money to give away. Piles of money, but you know what I mean. It's more about, like, we have a certain amount of money that we put aside every year to give away, and so who do I believe in the most? And it could be thistle. I never thought about thistle, but I never also thought about tamarisk. So it's more of, like, how did you craft your message, and do you care about what I do? Are you asking me questions as well? And so it's such a relationship, and it's also just about being super positive and collaborative. Having fun parties.
So I get to ask it. I work in a community kind of like Grand Junction, in that there's a river flowing through our community. And one of our challenges with engaging our business owners, and maybe you guys can give me a few examples of how we can get those business owners to see the value of a healthy river, healthy Verde River, or healthy river that's flowing through their community, and the link to their business success with that healthy river.
That's a tough one. I think if we could do that, we'd have a magic bullet that we'd sell everybody. I think Sarah touched on a little bit of it. I think those grassroots efforts, really planting those messages and starting to articulate as a community, what role does the river play in who we are and how we view ourselves and our livelihood. Grand Junction just did that, so I think it's easy for me to talk about. We didn't have an identity, and we unfortunately needed someone from California to help us come tell us, that we have these amazing assets. And as you look at recruiting businesses and retaining businesses and bringing in workforce and things like that, you have to key in on those assets that make you special and unique. And for places like ours, the river is really it. And so we had the opportunity here locally. The media picked up on it. We had a number of local community groups and volunteers and businesses that said, yeah, that's exactly right. We've been thinking that forever. I'm so glad someone finally said it. And so it's becoming this grassroots sort of effort where people are saying, this is important. This is important to who we are. This is important to how we view ourselves. So I think, maybe there's opportunities for your organization to maybe work with your chambers of commerce, work with your local media outlets to really start to plant those key messages that really describe the economic impact to the river, to your community. And Sarah's right. Economic development is sort of a buzzword right now, and everybody likes to connect into it. And there's some that you cock your head and say, "Really? That's economic development?" Okay, but if there are ways that you can bring it home to these companies where it meets them where they are, I think it's important. So I would encourage you, look for ways that you can start to do things from a grassroots sort of standpoint.
I would also add that a lot of times the business hasn't seen the river. They haven't seen it look bad. They haven't seen it look good. And I think you got to get people out there. And whether you do a activity like what we've done, partnered with a day of service type of activity, or if you just are inviting Sarah so you're having some beer, whatever it is that you're doing, I think you need to get people out there to see it with their own eyes, and understanding that really from a business, the trend now is that businesses go where people go. Years ago, it was people go where businesses are. And that's changing, and the river and outdoor recreation and the pieces that you have that make your community a place that people want to live are going to be important to that business. And so I would recommend doing a couple of things together, as Christy's mentioning, really grassroots, but don't forget to showcase the asset that you're talking about. And don't just email somebody about how the river is important with a picture of why it looks better now than it did before. Invite them out. Have a picnic, have an event. Do something where they can put their feet in the water because it's clean, because you've done great work. And I really encourage you to not forget that not everybody is in that business all day, every day, like many of you are, and invite them and let them really see the fruits of your labor and then possibly their money. And I think it's really an important piece, and it's a fun thing to do too. The Raft the River is a great example, I think, of that.
I would strongly encourage every business or any of you that want to figure out about the business value of the river to look at Protect the Flows. There have been extraordinary research done on the business value of Protect the Flows to everyone in the Western U.S. And that URL is www.protectflows.com. The studies that have been done, the urgency of the river, the importance of flows that are available through Protect the Flows and the website are going to help you tremendously. And there's a whole batch of us, the 1,000 businesses that are part of Protect the Flows that want to carry that flag with you, because having a healthy Colorado River and its tributaries and the riparian environment is central to everything that matters in the economy and lifestyle of the West.
I would just add, everything that was said was exactly spot on, but I would just add that, I'm going to forget what I'm going to say.
You can jump in a second if you remember. We have 10.
Okay, one really quick thing. You're in the Verde Valley, so pretty conservative. Anytime you hear the word, anybody hears the word sustainability or progressive or conservation, they're like, ah, right? It's so much like that here. And don't get discouraged, because people, when you meet with them one-on-one, are way more open to your thinking than you think they are. I think we do a lot of like, it's us against them, and it's not like that when you meet with people one-on-one, even the people that say crazy things in public. So I would just encourage you to not give up, stay strong.
Thanks. I have one more question and then we'll wrap up. We have about 7 minutes left, but many of the restoration projects that are happening in the West right now are made up of community stakeholder partnerships. So it's like in the Grand Valley, it's a valley-wide initiative with like 20 plus partners at the table. And businesses are typically involved as a funding partner, but I'm wondering if you can speak to looking beyond philanthropy. How would you are there examples of ways, or are there interests of yours of getting more involved in those projects that go beyond the donation piece that we've talked a lot about today?
You know, as we've been having this conversation, I've been sitting here thinking, you know, we have a strategic planning session every year, and we sit in a boardroom, and we're cross-eyed at the end of the day. You know, wouldn't it be great if we were to go take care of Thistle? You were brilliant today talking about Thistle. But you know, I think we would love to find ways that we can engage our businesses and, you know, find volunteer opportunities where we can build team, we can talk about the importance of the river to our economic vitality, where we can talk about the impact that nonprofits have on our community. I mean, you all are creating jobs, you're adding, you know, money back into the economy, you're strengthening our economy. So I think there are a lot of very positive things that we can do. So as I'm sitting here thinking, I would love to find an organization to get my board, all 27 members of them, to, you know, let's go out and let's you know, take out Thistle in an area for an afternoon, and then that evening we go into the, you know, brain numbing, you know, written part of the evening. But I can't encourage you to reach out to the businesses and the business nonprofits and let them know about what you have going on, because we really do want to plug into these sort of things. What you're doing is critical to us. We just need to know about it.
And I would add that a lot of times businesses want to help you and think that the only thing you want is money, which they may or may not be able to give. And so, as I mentioned, we do a day of service, but we also, all of our employees are given 40 hours a year of volunteer paid time off. And so to know about those types of opportunities where we could promote that to our employees and say, you can go get, you know, you can take a week and you can go help this organization with some of their remediation or restoration, I should say, efforts. We would love to be able to plug into that, and there are individual pieces for individual employees. So I mean, it may matter. It really matters to me, and something else may really matter to another employee. So I also think it's about looking at things beyond just writing a check and seeing if you can get some manpower, because I know that there are lots of organizations like mine that provide their employees with paid time off to help volunteer. And it's a great way, another way for you to be in front of that community relations person or somebody else in many different ways. And now you're getting the buy-in from the employees, which is also going to be a really important piece. I know that we've done the Tamarisk Coalition a couple years. We didn't do it last year. And I had many employees come and ask if we're going to do that one again, because that one was a really rewarding experience for them. So I think that it's also looking at ways that you can get some more manpower, women power.
Just a thought, we had a lot of introduction courses, whether that's introduction to fly fishing, introduction to big game hunting, a lot of those. And a big step of getting into that hobby is volunteering. And they're always asking about volunteer opportunities. So not just going out and doing the activity, but how can I get involved and make sure that this activity stays alive? So just thought I have, and I do get approached quite frequently regarding those opportunities, not just employees, but our customers.
Well, as alluded to in the beginning, Alpine Bank, like Excel, has 24, we don't have 40 hours, maybe I need to lobby for 40 hours a year, but we have 24 hours a year to volunteer or have your old boring job at the bank for those 24 hours. So obviously, reaching out to capture some of that volunteer time is a good way to, and we support it and we want it to happen. We even have a volunteer coordinator. So we have an individual in Mesa County that collects opportunities and gives us a chance to try something new. Like another thing I tried is I put solar panels out at Grand Valley Power for the community solar garden. And I got to see if I could be an electrician. So there are all sorts of things that you can do in terms of reaching out, at least at our bank, with that volunteer coordinator. Another way we engage is by serving on boards and committees. all of us at Alpine Bank are encouraged, at least when you get to the officer level, to really bring expertise, and not just in money, but planning and strategy to local nonprofits. So that's another way that organizations can help you in terms of the expertise that exists in their business leadership as well.
Just one more quick thing that I want to mention. With the volunteer piece, a lot of the larger companies, a number of the banks and Excel and such, they do a corporate match for if you've got an employee that gives, oftentimes larger companies will match that. So even if the company isn't giving you a check directly, if you get 100 of their volunteers out there and you can really appeal to them, there's opportunity to get those monies. The other thing that I would mention, we have a resource here in Mesa County, and I'd imagine there are probably similar things in Arizona and other states, but we have an enterprise zone. If you are a nonprofit that can make the case that you have an economic impact on your community, there is a tax credit that is available. It's a match, 25% match on every dollar a donor gives to your organization. The state of Colorado will give them a tax credit. So if you are not enrolled as a contribution project with the Mesa County Enterprise Zone, I would highly encourage you to take a look at that. It is something that donors look for. It's free money that they get back, and they will give you $100 and they get 25 back. So it's a great tool, and if you're outside of the state, there are a number of states that do very similar type programs, so take a look at them.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm going to wrap us up. I've invited all of the panelists to our poster session, so hopefully you guys stick around for your free drink, and you guys can have extra time to network with them. I really thank you so much for being here and letting us get to know you and what you do. I hope it inspires all of you to go grab your local business community people and take them out to coffee, because obviously there's a lot we can learn. And just, yeah, thanks again, and if we can give everybody a round of applause. The poster session is starting, I don't have my agenda, but very soon, 5:15, and it's out there. Thank you.